Doug, can we hand you the floor and ask you to tell us a bit about yourself and your campaign?
I would like to stop and take some questions at the end because I much prefer to hear your thoughts and concerns than listen to myself talk. But I guess I've met some of you. I've been to Cambridge a million times. That obviously Dorchester County is very important for me in my race for two reasons. One, as some of you may know, I was assistant United States attorney. I was the state's attorney in Montgomery County for 8 years. I was the attorney general of Maryland for 8 years. And one of those years I was president of all 50 attorneys general throughout the country. I got most notoriety in Cambridge when I was attorney general. I was the head of the environmental group for the country. And and the environment was my biggest issue as attorney general. And I went after the Cambridge Country Club and got a $500,000 fine against them for dumping fecal matter into raw sewage into the Choptank River. So I got a lot of criticism for that at the time, but it was the right thing to do. I would just sort of start out in terms of my race. There's a lot of people running. There's 9 people running, and for the nominee to be the Democrat for governor. It's going to be an incredibly difficult year next year. It's going to be a very Republican year. We've lost quite soundly the last 2 elections during Democratic years. And so what I think distinguishes me from my colleagues that are running is twofold. One is I'm the only person in the race with a long record of accomplishment in terms of progressive but practical values and getting things done. Like I said, I was in government for 23 years. The majority of the people running for office think Cambridge is in Massachusetts and have not run for office before for anything and have no connections really with Maryland, but are running nonetheless. And I think that people really want experience. This is not a time to experiment as we're coming out of a real crisis that is COVID, and they want someone who's exhibited leadership, and I'll talk about that in a second. And the second is where I started, which is we need someone that can win, that can actually win the general election. I remember I spoke to the governor's people after the last election. I ran in 2014 and lost in the primary to the then Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown. And they had me beating, a week before the primary, they had me beating Governor Hogan by 22 points and losing, and they had themselves beating Brown by 3 points. And so it's really an opportune time for us to win, to take back the seat. And I'm really excited about doing that. I just talk about 3 issues quickly. COVID, I mentioned already, as we revamp from COVID, as we come back and bring the state's economy back, we need to really use the infrastructure to restore things like the Maryland-Delaware Railway. We need to invest in with all this money we're getting from the federal government. We need to invest in jobs. We need to really focus on High Street, Ray Street, Pine Street, and revitalization there, downtown Cambridge, and prevent sprawl as we do it, and to put money into infrastructure and help the Eastern Shore. We need a Democratic governor that knows where the Eastern Shore is and cares about helping it. And so, and in so doing, we need to be mindful of the gaps that we saw during COVID, and we should all have been seeing all along, and making sure we tap the potential and talents of all Marylanders, regardless of where they live, what their zip code is, what they look like, and what their race is. And so I did that when I was president of the Attorney General to the national mortgage foreclosure crisis. We got almost $2 billion in to take on the corrupt big banks and we were able to keep people, thousands and thousands of Marylanders in their homes. And I'd like to do it again in COVID. The second would be climate change, which I sort of alluded to on the environmental piece. We did 22 river audits all over the state. We prosecuted polluters, corporate polluters, and really turned the tide literally and figuratively on the Bay. It's now gone back after 8 years of Republican leadership. And I look forward to putting the infrastructure in for electric vehicles, converting chicken manure into power as an alternative source of energy, wind power, solar power. There's an enormous amount containing sprawl and growth. I mean, for example, not in your county, but Trapp has 2,600 houses that are going to try and put in that kind of thing. We just don't want to see on the Eastern Shore. And the last one I would mention is crime. I'm the only person as a prosecutor for 22 years that has been in the criminal justice system that's running for office. I'm probably the only one that knows the difference between a conviction and an indictment, I got ahead on criminal justice issues way back in 1989. I was head of the NAACP Criminal Justice Committee in Montgomery County. I put in community prosecution. We put every police shooting into the grand jury. We promoted and had incredible diversity, both in the state's attorney and the attorney general's office. And we need to reimagine and be more innovative on the way we do criminal justice. But the ideas of like defunding the police and that kind of thing really, in my mind, is unacceptable. I mean, we have to be mindful that crime disproportionately affects communities of color and underserved communities. And the job of government, the number one job of government, is to keep people safe. So, and the last thing I would mention is courage. I think we need somebody with the courage to lead. I was ahead on gay marriage in Maryland by 5 years when I wrote an opinion in 2010 recognizing out-of-state same-sex marriage in Maryland. The Republicans literally started impeachment proceedings against me. And, I think we need the same type of leadership based on what we just saw in Texas. But more importantly, I mean, people in Maryland don't think we're Texas. They think that's something very different. But the Supreme Court is going to hear the Mississippi case this fall, and they will either reverse Roe v. Wade or certainly scale it back. And that is why we need a Democratic governor. We need a governor that can win and not somebody that's sort of on a vanity play, just trying to get themselves elected. So with that, I think I'll stop and subside to the extent I have any time left. And happy to take any questions or thoughts or comments and get your concerns. And I'd love to hear from you.
One of my great interests here on the Eastern Shore is how to get a green economy going. What thoughts do you have on combining the ecological concerns, environmental climate change concerns with economy?
Well, so I think there's two sort of things pop to mind. One is the governor of Maryland needs to have a relationship with the federal government, because for the first time, while we give lip service, and you'll hear the other candidates talk about climate change and all that, some of them probably recycle, but they really don't have a background in the environment. And having a relationship for the first time with the federal government is really monofocused on this issue of climate change and building the green economy. I think my relationships with folks in the federal government, I served with Kamala Harris for 4 years. Beau Biden was my closest friend of all the AGs. We got elected together. He passed, but I got to know Joe Biden through that. I think the relationships we have with the federal government, working with them, will help bring jobs. But more specifically, putting offshore wind in Ocean City is something that we need to do sort of right away. Get solar out in some of the fields in the open space where it's sunny and people want it. So we, again, prevent sprawl. But somebody asked me the other day, like, what are my sort of pet projects? Like, what can I do if I were governor besides making sure we had childcare available for every family, and we had pre-K available? It's building a factory, a power plant that on the Eastern Shore that would convert the 2 billion pounds of chicken manure that goes into the Chesapeake Bay every year into an alternative source of power, using electric trucks to haul the chicken manure from the locations to the plant. I tried to do it in 2014. We have the technology; it's there. We just need the willpower to do it, and then we can have more poultry and more agriculture and support our farmers and preserve the way of life that they want as well, while having an alternative power source.
What would you, as governor, do for the Eastern Shore as far as supporting the education reform?
Well, I think we need to pass Kerwin and the blueprint, and I don't think it will happen if I'm not the nominee, because I don't think we'll win, and I don't think the Republicans will concern themselves with Kerwin. So I think that's a start. I think we need to have pre-K from the beginning, and I think we just need to have somebody that has a focus on the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, frankly. I mean, Democrats typically have not had that. They come, they show up, they say hello, and then you never see them again when they get elected. And I think that's important. I think we need to really promote our teachers and make sure we get the best and brightest teachers by paying them more and having childcare available to teachers in all of the schools, whether on site or within cluster. And I also believe that we should really have vocational training back as part of the curriculum. Not everyone wants to go to Harvard or Princeton or whatever. Some people just want to be an HVAC person and be able to get that trained, so when they graduate from high school, they can get a job if they would choose to do so. So those are some of the ideas that I would like, and make sure we have proper funding for the Eastern Shore, and the Eastern Shore is not treated as a stepchild, which it often is particularly, unfortunately, by our party.